Hello, everybody. So today I am really excited to be able to interview Brett Aldridge, and she is going to be talking with us about something that, after over 3 years of this podcast, I thought I'd covered it all. And apparently I haven't really quite covered it all, because I think we may have lightly touched on this when I interviewed the doctor that I interviewed that had a doctorate degree in turmeric. But other than that, we definitely haven't done a full episode on this. We're going to be talking about Ayurvedic medicine, and sometimes I may have possibly mispronounced that, but I'm sure she'll correct me on that. But anyhow, welcome to Autoimmune Rehab, Brett. Why don't you start off by telling us a little bit in about 30 to 60 seconds? Who are you and what's your story that brings you on today?
Oh, sure. Quickly, my name's Brett Aldridge. I'm an Ayurvedic healthcare counselor, a breathwork practitioner, and facilitator. I've been teaching Ayurveda for well over 7 to 8 years, though practicing yoga for 22 years myself. I came on to this practice based on just personal need. I found a long time ago I was having some health concerns that I couldn't figure out what was happening with me, and neither could my doctor. And so we were at a point where I just started to investigate ways to help myself that were naturally. And I fell into a store that had a little note card that offered what Ayurveda was and how to support yourself every single day. And I started doing it, and it actually started to show some improvement in my health. And since then, I just kind of fell in love and kept following the thread of Ayurvedic medicine. And that's kind of how it went.
That's awesome.
Very
So start
quick.
off by telling us the basics. I know, at least a little about what Ayurvedic medicine is, but I know not everybody listening to this is going to be familiar with it. So tell the audience, what exactly is it?
Sure. It's really a lot, like many practices or medicines or holistic indigenous medicines. It spans like, a vast, huge, subject. It's a huge subject to tackle. So basically, I can say that it is a close to a 5,000-year old, science that was what they say realized by a few beings that decided to show humans, us here on this earth, on how to live and how to treat and take care of our bodies and our minds and our souls and our spirit. And so pretty much. We consider it a practice based on 5 elements, which is very similar to some other holistic or other indigenous practices. This one, in particular with Ayurveda, is indigenous to India. And what it is that it pretty much says that we are all made out of, everything is made out of 5 elements. And these 5 elements are uh, ether, air, fire, water, and earth. So we are all made out of these things, just different amounts of each. So we all have our own makeup and our own elemental makeup, and we call them prakrutis, which is a word stating constitution or how we're created or what we're made out of. And we base a lot of our decision making on how we treat our bodies and our minds on how we're made. And we try to find balance with those practices and those decisions. It is holistic, so we do the best we can to be as all natural as possible with the practices that we create or that we receive with these practices. We are everything from healthcare practitioners to practitioners. There are doctors as well who teach Ayurveda and practice Ayurveda and support people with their needs through Ayurveda. There's also hospitals too in India that practice what we do here. It has been native to India, however, been slowly coming over to the Western world as people have wanted to, investigate natural ways to support the body and the mind. And with Ayurveda, it's not just elements, the understanding that everything can be a medicine for you. However, based on your body's makeup, it's not always best for you. So, what works for one may not work for another. So, we base our decision making on our elements and what we're made out of and the characteristics of those elements. And we try to find balance by using that information.
That's awesome. That's great. So how do you start off figuring out, what kind of type or elements, any particular person might be.
Sure. Again, it's everything. So we use everything. We use every bit of information we can find, or and I can basically state as I speak and work with clients myself, we look and have conversation around, so for example, fire, right? That's one of the elements, and what are the characteristics of fire, right? Hot, warm. There's an oiliness sometimes to fire. It can burn things, it transmutes things, it changes things. Earth is heavy, sometimes cool by nature. And so we look at those characteristics with people that we're working with. So what we do is, as we're having conversation and we do like an intake we ask questions about their life, we do what most healthcare practitioners do. We look at their skin color. We notice how they speak. We see the color of the hair. We see the size of the eyes. We notice also, we look at the tongue. We look at the nails. We look at we look at all of those pieces, and every bit of that has characteristics, and those characteristics define these elements. And as we go on and we get to know them and we have questions like, what is your favorite food? What is your favorite thing to do? We ask all those questions, and they all have a quality. Every bit of what we do has a quality or characteristic, and those characteristics can define these different elements. And that's when we start to create a description of this person, and we assist them in finding ways to balance those elements. Some of us have more fire in our body than others, so we try to utilize practices that are cooling in nature. Some of us have more air and ether in our body, so we try to find ways to warm them up and ground them, because air and ether is light and cool and sometimes hard. And so we utilize practices to do the opposite, to find balance within the body. So that's usually how it goes. Again, we look at everything, and it all kind of starts to show a pattern. And when we find those patterns, that's where we can start discovering what would work best with someone.
That's awesome. That's great. So let's talk a little bit about how Ayurveda can help people with autoimmune conditions. I know that we have people with all different autoimmune conditions that listen to this podcast, but I would say the more common ones would be like Hashimoto's, Graves, rheumatoid arthritis. Those are probably the top three that I hear from people that I know they have. So let's say somebody has either one of those, or maybe they potentially have some other kind of an autoimmune thing, or maybe they even haven't even been diagnosed with an autoimmune thing, but they have symptoms and they're just struggling to get that diagnosis. So they know they've got, something going on autoimmune wise there. What are some
Mm.
of the ways that Ayurveda can help with that?
Sure. Again, these autoimmune diagnoses are so complicated sometimes. It can be very challenging, and it's a very challenging experience for so many. One, exploring in order to receive a diagnosis, but then once receive a diagnosis, how to treat and how to help yourself. Sometimes some people feel it's a moving target in a way, like it's really hard to pinpoint or even know what exactly is going to happen. Whether what's happening today could be different 3 days from that day, right? So it's so changing. So what we try to do, and what we try to do with many situations, is we try to find the root cause and see where exactly it's coming from, right? And that also can be an unfolding and a challenge to it in and of itself. So what we do is we do look at the symptoms. However, what we also do is look at digestion. We look at metabolism, your metabolic fire. We also look at, what organ is being affected by the issue. And then we utilize natural and holistic practices to target those areas. We again use the elements. We again use the constitution in order to diagnose, but also treat. So what works for one may not work for another, right? So in knowing and understanding, so if there's a diagnosis, sometimes when people are diagnosed, that most people say, okay, this is the diagnosis and this is what you do. And it's the same for everybody. Through Ayurveda, we not only look at the diagnosis, we also look at the whole person. And what may work for one, the diagnosis may be the same, but the person is different, right? One versus another. So we
Well,
use,
absolutely. Yeah. And with
yeah,
autoimmune conditions, it's never that simple.
right,
Well, you can have 20 people that all have a Hashimoto's diagnosis, and they're all going to have different things that have worked for them. There's always, some common things, like most of them have issues with gluten. Most of them can benefit from not having dairy or sugar, Most of them have too much stress, that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, there's not going to be an exact protocol that's going to be like, okay, that's it for every single one of you.
right.
Not that simple.
Absolutely. 100%. And it could be lifestyle too. And not just lifestyle as we say what we eat every day and what we do every day. It could be lifestyle as in, what climate and area do you live in? That could also be a participant. It could be, lifestyle in terms of like, do you have a very busy life or a very quiet life? That could also be a participate in your life. What we try to do is we do the base, but what we try to say is the basics, but it's a lot, right? How much sunlight do you get in a given day? Do you see the sunrise? Do you see the sunset? Those things alone too are also a piece of it, that we look into as well. So what we try to do is create a rhythm for people. So there's the circadian rhythm. So, or what we call an Ayurvedic clock. We start to develop a lifestyle for them that they can maintain, that is holistic and supportive for the person and who we're working with. And then we can start really refining that, and refinement meaning, what do we use for an herb? What would be most beneficial for you? What would be most beneficial and assistance for your digestion? Do you have any acidity in your stomach, or do you have a hard time digesting anything in general? Is your digestion really slow? So we try to figure that out too as well. So we basically treat the whole human being, start to finish, from the stomach to the organs to your, venous systems, to all the systems in the body. One of them is to work on your digestion. The other one is to notice if there's any toxins or what we call ama, which is unprocessed, undigested food or emotion in the body. What we also do is we check into, after we've collected all the information, there's a cleansing process and a rebuilding too as well. So there's so many ways we can do it. And the great thing about Ayurveda is that there's other things we can do other than just diet and lifestyle too. In Ayurveda, there's some Sanskrit. There's some words we use that isn't in the English language that do resonate as a vibrational piece too for the body. There's the way you hold your hands. There's mudras that you can place in touching of the hands, that also take part and can create some changes within the body. And there's also something called what we call marma points, which is also acupuncture or acupressure, which also take part in checking into the channels of the body, and different parts of the body or the organs can be, dare I say, I don't want to say ignited, but can be healed or assisted. You can have assistance with that through marmotherapy or acupressure. So there's a plethora of ways to do it. And again, like you say, everybody's different. So we go at it in different ways, whatever works best for that person as well. What's doable, what's useful, and what they can integrate into their life.
That's
And that's,
awesome. I love that. Yeah, because the reality is that sometimes people just get too overwhelmed, especially when you have an autoimmune condition. You get overwhelmed, you don't know what to do. And then traditional Western medicine is saying, okay, if you have a thyroid autoimmune, then it's only your thyroid that's the problem. And they're not looking at your whole body, realizing that no, actually, it isn't just the thyroid that's the problem. In fact, the thyroid's usually the least of your worries, and they're not actually recognizing that. And so, yeah, you really have to do a whole body approach, whether you do Ayurvedic or, acupuncture, or you go, with a functional medicine that's going to look at it. You can't just isolate that one organ. And yeah, so that's good.
yeah. And a lot of the times, like these symptoms are a sign or a signal, right? They're letting us know something. The body has such a real amazing way of informing us something isn't right. and it's communicating with us. So how else are we going to know something's not quite right if it's not telling us something's wrong? And how is it going to do that? It's going to create a dysfunction or behavior that is something that we don't like, that we're noticing and realizing. And, it's our body's way of surviving. It's our body's way of telling us what's going on. And, it can be really hard reality to face too as well, that this is what's happening. But at the same time, it's our body's way of trying to tell us it needs care. Um, Sometimes with these autoimmune situations, it's been something that's been going on for a really long
Hmm.
time. And when you come to that understanding, like say, for example, I'm like, you're 50 years old. You know what I mean? If you're 50 years old, okay, it took 50 years to get to this point where your body's telling you this. So it took 50 years to get here. Okay. So it's going to take some time to slowly unravel and unwind, what has been going on and where the sources of where this is all happening. So sometimes that gives it a little perspective. It doesn't make it easier, but it gives it a little perspective and understanding that, it took a long time to get here, so it's going to take some time to kind of understand and get to the point and to the place of in the source of what's been really going on. And then, the process of starting to feel better. We can't always cure everything. However, the one, hope through Ayurveda is to prevent suffering or lessen the suffering involved. And that's a big piece of it as well, is to do that too. And knowing that you can do it yourself, you don't always have to have someone else do it for you, kind of allows you to have some empowerment. Also, getting to know your prakriti or your constitution, knowing what you're made out of and knowing what you can do to balance that also is a level of empowerment that sometimes we lose when we receive a diagnosis that seems so complicated and overwhelming. So every little bit of knowledge and understanding, self-knowledge and self-understanding does assist in some way, shape, or form for people.
Awesome. That's cool.
Yeah.
So typically when you start working with somebody, talk to us a little bit about one of the first things you got to do is figure out what kind of type or elements that person is. And then what
Mhm.
would you say would be like the next thing? Once you figure that out, what are some of the other things that you do for people?
Sure. We do narrow down, what we're made out of first. And then we go into the piece of like, all right, so what is the most important thing right now that you have on the top that you want to take care of? Something that you know that might be attainable or is a big deal, right? It's either something that's small or something really grand or large, right? Um, and then we just start discussing what their life is already. What are you already doing for yourself? And sometimes people think like, I just don't know what I'm doing. I don't have this, that, or the other. And sometimes I'm like, actually, when we discuss your life, you actually are doing some things that are assisting you. So we try to kind of go, what is really helping you and what do you do right now that it's actually doing something for you? And then what are some things that maybe you could start shifting and moving? Um, we also do the best we can to have it be a slow process. We don't want to say, stop doing all of these things right now, even though you've been doing them for 10 years. So we try to integrate practices that are doable, useful, um, and something, just one thing we can incorporate that's different, that would start moving towards a feeling of, balance and homeostasis. So we really do try to talk about like the one thing that they really want to work on.
Awesome, that's great. So I know obviously, autoimmune's connected to, your gut system, your nervous system, all that kind of stuff. Tell us a
Mm.
little bit about the roles that some of those play and how Ayurveda can help with like your digestion, your nervous system.
Yeah, absolutely. Ayurveda is really about like a lot of Ayurveda is centered around your metabolism, your metabolic fire. A lot of it really is repairing the internal body, the gut or the stomach. There can be many factors with the stomach, right? It could be over acidic. It could be, not at all. It could have nothing. You could have like a very slow metabolism or like manda agni, which is like slow digestion, um, and which could also bring on issues within the body. So what we do is we utilize herbs, spices, foods, daily practices. We even use pranayama, which is breath work. in order to, focus on the gut health. And that alone can start changing some things and making some things a little bit different in the whole entire body. When we do that, we're able to burn off, as we say, ama or toxins that are at the outer part of the body, right outside of the stomach, that can go into the organs, into the tissue of the body. So we first try to work on your digestion while we're also working on the outer symptoms as well. So, say, for example, if you have, eczema, or if you have psoriasis or even arthritis, we work on your digestion, but we also work on the discomfort as well at the same time. So, there's different types of oils. There's different types of herbs you can take or even put topically onto the body to also deal with any of the symptoms. But first is digestion. The second is also getting rid of toxins in the whole entire body. So sometimes we do a cleansing or a detox as well. Once we understand what's going on with your digestion. And then after the cleansing process, we try to rebuild the body. We try to rebuild tissue that might have been lost. And whether in the body or in the brain or in the nervous system as well. So it's a cyclical process. And we will do cleanses over and over and over again over the years. But it is a lifestyle change.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's good. I think that's important for people to realize. So
Mhm.
tell us a little more about what's your website? Where can people connect with you if they want to learn more about you?
Yeah, sure. My website is www.seedthespirit.com. You can reach me through my website. I do a 20-minute free consultation for anyone that has interest or just wants to have a conversation around the subject or have questions about it. I am on Facebook, Seed the Spirit LLC. And I'm also on Instagram, which is Brett.Perron, Perron. And I'm usually posting where I'm going to be, where I'm teaching. I am teaching here in Maine. I'm in the state of Maine, so I do in-person teachings. And I also do Zoom online sessions with people, either short-term sessions, breathwork sessions, and also I work with people long-term as well.
Awesome, cool. That's great. Okay, so we will link your website. Well, I'll find your Facebook and your Instagram. We'll link you. And then when the episode comes out, people will be able to see little previews there. And so we'll tag you on your Facebook and your Instagram. So that'll be good too. And then anything else you wanted to bring up before I ask you the final question of this interview?
I don't think so.
Okay, so if you could go back in time to, several years ago, back when you were having your health issues and before you knew what you know now about Ayurveda, what is one thing that you would tell yourself that you wish you knew?
Hmm. That it was all going to work out. Everything was going to be fine. At the
Good.
first time, there was a level of panic, I have to admit, when things started to change and I was starting to have some health concerns. I got really worried. And the biggest piece was, don't worry, it's all gonna work out. It's gonna be okay.
That's awesome. That's great. Yeah, I think a lot of people can use hearing that, and I think that's definitely really common.
Yeah, absolutely. Everything's gonna be all right.
Hey, awesome, great. Well, thanks for coming on. And yeah, I encourage you all to check out links in the description to learn more about her. For no other reason, just go check out and see what information you can gather about Ayurveda because it's really something definitely worth knowing at least the basics about. So,
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
yep, you're welcome.